Happy Training Tuesday yet again, everybody, and thank you for joining. It is Tuesday night. It is 6 o'clock Eastern Time, and we are here to talk about office politics. Office politics has been the theme for the last couple of weeks, and today we're going to take a slightly different approach to it. Today we're going to talk about how we change our mindset around office politics. And I want to do that by busting up some myths and talking about the different profiles that show up to the political game that we have at the office. So I'm very happy to have you guys joining me. And if you saw the promo, the post that I published, I think this afternoon about it, I was telling you a story about my friend Bob. Because this was the experience when I realized that we don't escape office politics, no matter how hard we try. I had worked at an office with Bob. I'd been there a few months when he and I started becoming friends. And the one thing that I noticed about him was he was always talking to people. He was very well liked, and he knew people in all the different departments and up and down the food chain, and he took his time to cultivate these relationships with people, which I could admire, but I was what we call a purist, and I believed that if I worked hard and did my best, my work would speak for itself. And I didn't need to play this office politics game. That was my purist attitude. And a core part of that is, the truth is just that I'm an introvert and office politics looks hard. Like that all talking to everybody and creating these relationships in these different departments and things, it just seemed really hard. Didn't want to do it. And I did think that if I worked hard and if I did good work, that should be enough, because that's what they paid me for. And we're trained that way, right? School trains us that if we study and we do good homework and we do well on tests, we get recognized. Right? Teachers recognize us, parents recognize us. We get good grades, maybe we get scholarships, right? Good things happen when we showcase our work. And maybe if you were like me and like you were a really good student, right? This model worked for us to a certain point. And if you were like me and a really good student, you would also get to that place where like you would see the other kid who was like not working so hard, sometimes even getting in trouble, sloppy with their work. And yet the teachers really liked that person, right? Because he was charming or she was funny or had a lot of personality. And I was always just like, why? I'm the one working hard and making the good grades here, and they're sloppy. Well, school is our introduction to office politics. So back to my story about Bob, because I want to actually introduce another character that I did not discuss in my post this afternoon, which is our boss. Bob and I reported to the same boss. We called him the Golden Retriever. And we called him the Golden Retriever because he was very friendly and very nice, and he always did exactly what his bosses told him to do. And he didn't question things, and he didn't really try to do things better. And so Bob and I, being young and ambitious, were always like, we're going to make this better. We're going to, or this plan doesn't make sense, or there's a strategy is wrong. And Mike would smile and go, yeah, maybe, but this is what the boss wants, so this is what we're going to do, guys. And we do it. And the result of all of this is that Mike, the Golden Retriever, who was always upbeat and always doing whatever the boss asked him to do, it didn't matter how ridiculous we thought it was, got promoted from vice president to senior vice president. And Bob got promoted from senior manager to director. And I got laid off. So we're going to talk about these different political profiles, the Bob and the Mike profile, and the Natalie profile, as we explore office politics, political profiles, and a few myths. So we're going to dive into it here, and before I do, I just want to welcome everybody to Training Tuesday. And Hello, Kelly. I see you there. As always, I invite you all to say hello in the chat. Tell me where you're dialing in. I was just dialing in from like it's a phone call. Tell me where you're logging in from. We have women in this group from all over the country and actually all over the world. So always happy to have you here. If this is your first Training Tuesday, welcome. We are here every Tuesday at this time, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, talking about different topics when it comes to leadership and confidence building and managing our careers and the ever dreaded work-life balance. And I am always open to your ideas and suggestions if there are topics that I haven't covered that you would love to see and hear know more about. Always open to that, and love having your feedback in the chat. So as we're having this conversation, if I'm asking questions, I would love for you to answer them. If you have comments, ideas, a story to share, by all means share it in the chat as we go along. If you're watching this in the replay, do the same, because we all learn from each other's experience. And we're always a little bit surprised of how much of the same experience we all have. So thank you guys. So hello to Kelly, hello to Sue. Always happy to see you, Sue. And hey, Jill, thank you for joining us tonight. All right. Keep the comments coming. By all means, jump in with your questions, your comments, your stories. I love to hear that. What I want to talk about is the difference between office politics and kind of our daily management of people and outcomes. Do you guys have any idea of like what is the difference between navigating office politics and navigating like the rest of your life, right? Your family members and family routines and stuff like that. I looked up the Oxford English Dictionary definition of politics and came back with the activities involved in getting and using power to influence decisions. The activities involved in getting and using power to influence decisions. Now, specifically with politics, it's in public life, in a country, in a society. In office politics, it would be in the office. But I'm going to posit, I'm going to say that we do this every day in every aspect of our lives. So myth number one is the idea that office politics don't exist at my job and they just don't exist. They don't, and they don't have to. The truth is we can't escape office politics because it is core to our nature. Every day, in every part of our life, we are leveraging a political tool, we can choose to look at it that way, to get things done. So for those of you who are parents, how often have you negotiated or persuaded a toddler to do something you wanted her to do? How many times have you used your skills in logic and influence to convince your parents to do something? How often have you had a conversation with someone just to build a connection and see what you have in common? These are the skills we use every day in managing our relationships and our friendships, and that we also use in, guess what? Office politics. So Sue, early in your career, you were told there are hardball and softball politics. Sure. And I would say that, and we'll talk a little bit about maybe what that looks like, hardball versus softball. But I would also say that the big distinction I want to make, it's not that office politics are bad or a dirty word. It's the outcome that individuals are striving for, right? Judging office politics is judging conversation. It's judging persuasion. Whereas what we really should be judging is what's the outcome we're working towards and what are we willing to do, right, to get to that outcome. So myth number one is office politics doesn't exist at my job. Yes, it does. If there are people at your job, if there are people involved in your job, let's say customers or clients or partners, you have office politics. It is a function of us as human nature, part of human nature. We are social creatures, so what we do with each other every day is we manipulate, we persuade, we negotiate, we convince every single day. So the question is just, to Sue's point, really, what kind of politics are you playing? Now, myth number 2 is I can either play politics or I can be a good person, but I can't do both, right? We have this sense that playing politics is out of alignment with our integrity, that it's icky, that if I have to play that game, then it's icky. I'm being icky. I'm being disingenuous, right? I'm not being genuine. I'm not being authentic to myself. You could look at it that way, or you could think about getting your project approved. You could think about getting coworkers to help you work on a project or an initiative. You could think about getting a raise or a promotion. Playing politics does not have to be out of alignment with your integrity. It is the outcome or the goal. It is what you're willing to do to get there that can be out of alignment. So, are you willing to have a conversation and make a friendly connection with somebody on the executive team if it means that you could be put on a project that you're very excited about? Why is that icky? Why is it icky to connect with somebody and build a bond of trust so that you can not only get what you want, which is being put on the project, but they also can make a choice that benefits not just you, the individual, but benefits the company because you're excited about the project, because you want to be on this, right? Lots of benefits in that. And still, the action of going and making that connection is technically office politics. So myth number 2 is that if we're playing politics, we could be out of alignment with our integrity, and that's just not true. It does not have to be out of alignment with our integrity. There's a way to play the game, right? There is a way to negotiate this path that is completely in alignment, not only with who you are, but what it is you want to achieve. Myth number 3, this is my favorite one because I use this all the time, which is my work should speak for itself. Carla Harris is the vice chairman at Morgan Stanley, and she famously says, you can't let your work speak for you. Work doesn't speak. Ta-da! She's right. Work doesn't speak. Because here's the thing. Everyone, your boss, the executive team, the people working as your peers, the people working on your team below you, everyone is focused on their job and their priorities. They are not so focused on your work. Even your boss who's paid to be focused on your work is not so focused on your work. This is why, if you've worked with me or if you coach with me, you know that a big part of our coaching is talking about how do we present ourselves, how do we communicate our value without feeling icky. We women have an ick factor when it comes to bragging. We don't like to brag. And we think that our work should be recognized. But the truth is nobody's paying attention to us because they're focused on their own goals and their own priorities. It is up to us to communicate our value. And there are non-icky ways to do this. So if you're sitting back like I was and thinking your great quality work is going to speak for itself and show everybody how smart you are and what a great job you've done, then you could end up where I ended up, which was laid off. I ended up without a job because nobody was advocating for me or for my team. All right. Something I hear very often. So 4th myth we're going to bust tonight. Something I hear a lot from the women I work with is, I'm no good at politics. I'm just no good at it. And I had a bit of that because, like I said, I'm an introvert. And so this whole idea that I had to go talk to people and make friends with people and maybe even some people I didn't like or just, why? And that's a lot of extra effort and energy I have to spend to go do something that's my job anyway, and it should be their job anyway. And so we build up these stories of, I'm no good at politics. I'm no good at it. So I want you to take a breath and ask yourself, how true is that? How well do you manage your kids? How well do you manage your friends your partner? How well do you manage any of your personal relationships? Or do you have none? How well do you work with others at work? Like, how well do you work with a team? How well do you work with your boss? Does your boss hate you? Do your coworkers not ever want to work with you? Do your kids not talk to you? Do your parents think you're a jerk? Right? If we can manage relationships, we can play politics, because that is the common thread. So what I want to do is I want to redefine a few key phrases. I would love to know in the chat, my friends, I would love to know, what are some common phrases you hear or you use when you're talking about office politics? I only thought of a couple of them, but I thought if we could reframe some of these, we could reframe all kinds, but I would need your help. So I'm going to share with you the few phrases that I've thought of, but I would love in the chat if you can think of other phrases you hear or that you use or think about when it comes to office politics, then please share. Sucking up. That was the first phrase I thought of. When we talk about office politics, we talk about people sucking up, kissing ass, excuse the non-French French, right? That's the old phrase. The old phrase is sucking up or kissing butt. What's the new phrase? The new phrase I want you to replace that with is building connection and understanding. You're not sucking up. You're not kissing the boss's bum. You are building connection and understanding, because it is with connection and understanding that we make decisions, that things happen. I had another phrase. Where's my other phrase? Other phrase. Lobbying, right? They're lobbying to get their project done. They're lobbying to be put in charge of that. Or politicking. We use that word politicking just as much too. But what happens with lobbying a lot of the times is what? We're trying to build that connection understanding, but we're also coming in at an angle, right? It suggests that we're coming in at an angle. So I want to reframe this idea that we're lobbying, that we're manipulating, with the idea of you're not lobbying, you're doing your homework. You're doing your homework. Because for your project or your mission, your goal to be successful, knowing about the people that you need to work with, knowing who the decision makers are and what's important to them, that's just smart, right? That just makes sense. So instead of lobbying or politicking or manipulating, I want you to be thinking about doing your homework. Another old phrase. This is the last old phrase. Do you guys have any phrases you can think of when we think about politics, office politics? The last phrase I thought of was pre-gaming or stacking the deck, right? We talk about people going around and, getting everybody on board before the meeting, right? Getting everybody on board. And we look at that as a very manipulative form of pre-gaming, of selling people on something before the actual decision so that it's already a slam dunk, especially in global politics when you look at that, right? We look at that type of behavior as very negative. But here's the thing. If you have an idea, an initiative that's truly beneficial to the company, that's truly beneficial to your goals, then what you're really doing is creating the best chance for success. So your old phrase is pre-gaming or stacking the deck. Your new phrase is creating the best chance for success. Because we all need allies and influencers to help us move forward initiatives and goals that are important. So instead of sucking up or kissing bum, you are building connection and understanding. Instead of lobbying or politicking, you're doing your homework. And instead of pre-gaming or stacking the deck, you're giving your ideas the best chance for success. All right? A little bit of reframing. Another way to think about this is, how would your approach to politics, right, to office politics, be different if this were your own business and the people you were going to, the people you needed to influence and persuade, were your board of directors and your investors? How would you approach politics differently if it were your business idea, your objectives, and you needed a board member to help you carry it through? You needed investors to agree to fund it. Would it not be worth your time to build that connection, right? Establish that relationship and take that board member out to lunch and explain your idea and see if you can get them to agree to be one of your allies? Would it not be worth your time to do a little research of who your investors are and what their background is so that you can find angles that they care about? You can find something in their past of where they've invested before or their history of where they went to school and leverage that to say, hey, we have a connection here. There's something we have in common here. Now let's go do something else that we could have in common that would also be amazing. So I want you to think about it in terms of, if I own this outcome, I own the success of this goal, this initiative, this project, this promotion, this raise, I own that. What am I willing to do to get there? And then this is where Sue gets into kind of the hardball versus softball politics. What are you willing to do? Well, number one, you're not willing to step out of alignment of your integrity. So you're not going to lie. You're not going to cheat. You're not going to go backstab or gossip about other people to get it done. But that doesn't mean that you don't present yourself in the best possible light. It doesn't mean you don't share your value, your contributions, and your ideas to showcase your strength and your power as a leader. You can play politics and still be in your integrity. So let's talk about these 4 profiles, because that one I just described is the purist, and that was me. That was a big part of me. These are 4 common profiles that author, or I guess she's a researcher. She classifies herself as an office politics expert. Her name is Kathy Kelly Reardon. She's written articles and things on office politics. So I would love to hear, as I describe these profiles, which ones are you, or if you see yourself as a combination of any of these. These are 4 different profiles. They all actually have a role. They have a place. But some are definitely stronger tools than others, right? And the first profile is the purist, which is where I started in my very self-righteous, naive youth of, I don't have to play politics. My work is going to speak for itself. I'm not going to lower myself to these games, because my interpretation was that office politics was a lot of backbiting and backstabbing and all of that. And it doesn't have to be that way, right? That's the hardball part of it that Sue's talking about, right? When you're willing to step over any line to push and get what you want, to manipulate to get what you want. So as a purist, I felt like I can hold my head high because I am in my integrity. I have a little bit of a holier than thou attitude. But the truth is, what have I actually accomplished towards my goal when I'm standing in my purist position? I was isolated from a lot of the interactions that happened with other people at the company because I was not connecting, right, and creating relationships the way I could have been. And I isolated myself right out of a job, right? So the purist is someone who is so focused on their dislike of the idea of politics that they pretty much self-isolate. Now that's one profile. Another common profile is the street fighter. The street fighter is the person who pushes things through. Gonna get it done no matter what. We're going to make this happen, and we're going to make sure everybody knows it. Now, if you work with me, and a couple of you who are here on the call tonight, who are live with me, do work with me, or have worked with me, so you know I'm all about energy. This is what we call energy level 2 in my world. In my world of coaching, I coach around 7 levels of energy. This is level 2. Level 2 energy is a leadership energy level, and it's the energy level that says no matter what else happens, I'm getting this done. And leaders who lead with level 2 energy push through, regardless of collateral damage or what anybody else thinks, to get their objectives done. And the positive of this is things happen. Things do get done. The negative of this particular style is that you're not really making friends, right? When we push through our goals with the no matter what, right? No matter what philosophy, we are typically steamrolling over people. I've had this political profile as well. I've been in a position where I used the Street Fighter to get a few things done at work for a team I was managing, and I pretty much had a mutiny on my hands. So there is a time and place for Street Fighter. There's a time and place where it's important to push things through and to get them done. And yes, using a little bit of anger or conflict to ensure that happens can actually be a useful tool. Probably not the first one you want to pull out of your tool belt, though. Now, team player is persona, profile number 3. The team player is the person who believes that if I support everybody, if I help everybody with what they need, we're going to get it done. So the team player is a very positive type of office politics, because we're all about supporting the team, supporting my boss, supporting my coworkers, supporting any teams that might report to me, helping them get what they need to be successful. In my energy world, for those of you who work with me, this is level 4 energy, right? 3 and 4 energy is all about let's collaborate, let's focus on getting the goal done. The team player is a very cool profile because it's very team focused. It's building connections, right? This is how we use our political skills to build connection. One of the challenges with this profile, though, is that this is the profile that most quickly depletes its energy because it's so focused on giving its energy to other people. I'm supporting this team member and that team member and this initiative and that group, that there's not a lot of self-focus on how do I rejuvenate my own energy, right? How do I keep myself excited and motivated for what we're doing? We deplete very quickly in this particular level, in this particular profile. So we've got the purist, who just is avoiding politics altogether, level 1 energy in my world. The street fighter, who uses force, right? Who pushes things through in order to get it done, level 2 energy in my world. The team player, who is the massive collaborator, always working with teams, always supporting teams, wants to be seen as that person who can be counted on, right? Part of their political agenda is management will see that I can always be relied upon to be there and to get the job done. Levels 3 and 4 in my world. The 4th profile is what we call the maneuverer. And actually, before I go into that, Kelly, I see your comment, team player, and it gets exhausting. That's exactly right. That team player role can be very productive and very positive, but all that energy is all about other people. And if we're not getting rewarded back from those people that you're supporting, or if you're not finding some sort of refreshing of your motivation and your energy in some other way, you get to a point where we become the martyr. We become, nobody recognizes how much I do for them, right? I'm underappreciated. I'm undervalued. That's a very real feeling, right? And that can be a very real thing because we are so giving in that mode. All right, the 4th profile is what we call the maneuverer. It's a hard word, maneuverer, but that's what she calls it. The maneuverer is the person who is very precise and very deliberate about whom they politic with. So when you think about my earlier story about Bob and Mike the Golden Retriever, Mike the Golden Retriever was the team player. It was always, what does the boss want? The boss is going to get done, and my team, I'm going to make sure that they can do the job. Bob was a maneuverer. Bob paid attention to whom he needed to talk to up the org chart and down the org chart, as well as laterally. Bob was selective about where he spent his energy, which projects he got involved with, and whom he spoke with. He was broadly liked, he was very effective, but he was also selective. And in being selective, he preserved some of his energy, and he stayed focused and efficient on what he wanted to accomplish. So this profile typically is able to kind of step back, have a 30,000 foot view of what's going on, and then they airdrop themselves in, right? They parachute in at specific points to say, here's what I'm going to fix, here's what I'm going to address, here's who I'm going to talk to. So these are master strategists. when you're watching those political dramas, and there's always that one guy, it's usually a guy, that one guy behind the scenes talking to all the people, building up the story, making things happen, and nobody knows he's doing it. And we have that sense of ick, ick, and damn, he's good. That's a maneuverer. You can be a maneuverer without the ick factor, by the way. It just means being smart about who you're talking to, how you're spending your time, where you're spending your energy in order to make things happen. And Sue, I'm sorry you lost the connection. I didn't get a notice that I have a lost connection on this end, so I'm hoping that everybody is still with me. Those are the 4 profiles. All right, the purist, this is according to Kathleen Kelly Reardon, the purist, the street fighter, the team player, and the maneuverer. So you could be one of those. You could be a blend of the 4 of those. The key is in being aware. Welcome back, Sue. The key is in being aware of what those roles are and thinking about what's the appropriate time and place for each of those roles. There are times when being that team player is critically important, and it gives you visibility, and it builds trust. And there are times when being the street fighter is important, because something is that important to push through that you're willing to step on a few toes, knowing that your end goal is the true benefit. That's when you got to be careful with, because that's the one where you get into hardball, and it could be seen as this is not a nice person. So that's one where, again, it's a tool you can use, and it can be very effective, and it walks a little bit of that line of, am I in line with my integrity if I force the issue? And there's the maneuverer who steps back and pays a lot of attention. Now, to use these roles effectively, to use these styles effectively, you need to pay attention to your political environment. Every environment's different. And for those of you who say my environment's not political, I remind you again, you're wrong. It is political. So your homework is to go figure out, what kind of environment am I in? Right? Is this a highly political, toxic environment where there's a whole lot of street fighting going on? Is this a more collaborative team player environment, so everybody's trying to get along, but everybody's burnt out and exhausted, right? What's the blend? And then what's the style of political, what's the political profile of your boss, of your peers, of your teammates? Right? You pay attention to how people like to interact, and this helps you choose how you're going to interact going forward. How are you going to be most successful? If your boss, like mine was years ago, the golden retriever, a total team player, it benefited me to be a team player more than I was. Because I was hovering between strategist and street fighter. I got so annoyed with what I thought were some very bad business decisions and very bad marketing strategy that I was creating strife because I was trying to prove a point rather than being a team player and just getting the job done. Had I been savvier and smarter about my work environment, I would have seen that the golden retrievers succeeded in this company. And if I had wanted to stay, I needed to play that game of being more of a golden retriever. And then I need to have the conversation of, can I be a golden retriever and be in alignment with my personal integrity? Where are those boundaries? So like everything I talk about with you guys, it's about our boundaries. It's about knowing who we are, what we're about, and creating clear boundaries around that. So pay attention to your profile. Pay attention to the profile of the environment that you work in, and make your clear choices of who you are and how you want to show up as a leader and a political player, because you can't avoid it. From there, politics does not have to be a dirty word. So thank you for joining me for Training Tuesday tonight. If you would like to talk more about office politics, your role in office politics, your particular profile, how you want to negotiate going forward, I would love to have that conversation with you, or anything else regarding how you lead and keeping up your confidence and your personal power as you lead. So I invite you to what we call the Dirty Girl Mini Dig, which is a free coaching conversation with me. It's a short coaching call where we're going to focus on you and whatever specific issue, challenge, conversation you want to bring to the table. The goal of the conversation, the mission of this conversation, is to get you one step closer to your leadership and career goals. So I call it the Dirty Girl Mini Dig. All you need to do is drop the word dig in the chat, D-I-G, dig in the chat, and I will reach out to you over Facebook Messenger. We'll set up a time and we'll have this conversation about how we move you one step closer in your career goals. It's a free conversation. It's not a sales conversation. It's a way for me to connect with you guys, to say, hey, I'm your coach. I'm here. I would love to get to know you better, hear more about you, and see if I can help. So drop the word dig in the chat if you'd like that free 15-minute chat, and I will reach out. Otherwise, my friends, thank you for joining me for tonight's Office Politics Training Tuesday. I will see you again next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. And in the meantime, I'll see you in the group. Have a great night.